Morning. Hello again from the forge. Well, since we used the power hammer, we used the power hammer in the last video, even though we didn't capture it all. Today we're going to use nothing but the hammer and anvil. Got a little piece of 1/4 inch thick high carbon steel. I want to make kind of a hunter today. Let's get it hot, smack it a few times and see what happens. Okay. So we're going to start out by drawing out our point, as I usually do. And you'll notice things look a lot slower than they do in my usual videos because I'm going to run this one on regular speed instead of fast forward. It's a fairly simple blade design, so it shouldn't take all that long. So I can afford to show it a little slower. Just got to make sure I draw this out to the length I want and keep the thickness dressed correctly. I don't want to start drawing the taper on this blade quite yet. Basically, I'm setting up a preform. So I've got my tip tapered the way I want it. Now I'm going to knock a reverse curve into this blade. I want a fairly sharp curve into what's going to be the blade because I want the blade to have a little curve in it, but not too much, so I have to have a pretty good curve so it won't curve too much when I hammer in the bevels. Now I'm going to set in the transition between the handle and the blade. Dress it back down for thickness. I believe that's going to do. Now I'm using a piece of round stock to forge in a choil. The choil being the unsharpened portion of the blade, which usually isolates the sharpened portion from wherever your finger is going to be resting. We're done now, and we can start hammering out the bevels. I'm just trying to draw down the heel of the blade, working it from both sides, keep it in the center. I'm using that 4-pound hammer. I'm using the rounding side of that 4-pound hammer right now just to get the shape where I want it. Later we'll go to a lighter hammer with a flat face and go back and just smooth out all the hammer marks. But for now, this is the best way to move more steel in less time. And you can see how stretching those bevels are starting to straighten that blade, taking the curve right out of it. As well as making the blade wider. Looks pretty weird right now, but it'll all make sense in a minute. And again, that camera is showing that blade to be way hotter than it is. If you go by the colors you see on that camera, that blade would be nearly forge welding temperature. And it's certainly not. That's more like the temperature it actually is. Just kind of a bright orange. dress it just a little. You can see how that blade's now got a nice curve to it, but it's not really terribly swept upward. It looks much more curved than it is because we've still got work to do on the handle. And now I'm just using that lighter hammer and taking out the hammer marks. Just planishing it at a low heat, smoothing everything out. Looking pretty good. And if you paid attention, you could see the distal taper in the blade. It tapers from the thickest part being right at the base of the blade there at the choil, tapers smoothly out to the tip. Now let's straighten it out so we can start working on the handle a little bit. And that handle is, the handle material there is still 1/4 inch thick. And a person could cut it off right there and just have 1/4 inch thick handle, but you know what? If you're forging a blade, it really should taper both ways. It should taper from the thickest point being right at the base of the blade out toward the tip, and taper the other way from that being the thickest point toward the end of the handle. And that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm just knocking in some distal taper, and that's also widening the blade, or I could lengthen, it's widening the handle. I could also use it to lengthen the handle if I didn't have quite enough material, and we're actually going to do that here momentarily. I'm going to knock in a little contour to the handle, and using the corner of the anvil, I'm drawing it out for length, putting that taper into it. And now, since I have my material pretty close, I'm going to go ahead and mark on the anvil how long I want the handle to be before I cut it off. Now that mark's going to be about 1/4 inch shorter than what I want the finish length to be, because I'll still have some taper to do on this handle after I've cut it to length. If you're going to mark it, you got to check it. And it's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to take a center punch and make a dot, and that's going to show me where I want to cut the handle off. Get our hardy cutter in, get the thing to fit right. There we go. Warm it back up. Clean it off so I can see my mark. And just use the hardy cutter to clip it off. Done. Now that handle's about 1/4 inch short. Now I'm going to stretch that 1/4 inch. Get my 1/4 inch of length back by putting in more taper. It's not looking bad, not looking bad. And when I say I made it 1/4 inch short, I mean 1/4 inch short from the thickest part of the blade, not the actual handle length itself. Otherwise, when you look at this video, you're going to think that I'm forging to the mark I placed on the anvil, and I'm just using it as a guideline. It's actually looking pretty good at this point. Just got to make sure everything is straight, because your taper both ways has to line up. This is not the part of the process to be in a hurry. Fairly well satisfied with that. But we had a couple little uneven spots there in the handle. So I'm just using the lighter hammer to take out those hammer marks and even things up. Yep, that's pretty good. All right. So while it's still warm and straight and the taper's right, we'll go ahead and warm it back up. And we'll get started with the normalization process. Yep, I do believe it'll work. All right, here we go. Got her finished up. Need to grind the end of the handle there a little bit where I've got the angle from where the hardy cutter cut it off. But it's going to be a right handy size knife. Good blade length, just a little bit of upsweep for skinning. Should make somebody a really good one. Just have to punch a couple holes in the handle, get it heat treated. Thank you very much for watching. If you're still here, be sure and hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm. Leave us a comment in the comment section. God bless and have a great day.